Hello, everybody. This is Ethan Sommer with the Scott Summer Sobriety podcast, Scott Summer Sobriety program, NextGen Sobriety podcast here. I am sitting with our clinical director, Neil Sommer, and our guest for the day here, Lloyd Freeberg. Now, Lloyd Freeberg is the founder of what is called Sobriety Law. He is a longtime attorney here in Orange County. He has a lot of great work under him. How you doing today, Lloyd?
I'm doing well. When you say I've been a long-time attorney, I have to remember it's 21 years, so I'm lucky I can even communicate at this point. It's been a long time. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. And you're not sick of it yet, huh?
I remember the bar exam was 2 questions, and one was my name, so I got pretty well.
Oh, man, we've come a long ways here. It's a wonder what we're doing now. So anybody who is curious about what sobriety law is exactly, I would love to answer the question, but I'm curious too. So Lloyd, you want to take this one and run here?
I would love to. And if I can, I'd like to start with a story about where it came from.
Absolutely.
I came from playing professional sports. I became a lawyer. All I was interested in was trying cases. It was the greatest experience to do, to get 12 men and women good and true in a box. They'd never seen you before. They didn't know anything about the case, and at the end, win it. And I had good luck with it until I had 2 clients. One was named Oscar. He was 47 years of age. He had a 3rd-time DUI with a 3.9 blood. There were times the criminalists were testifying at 4.0, you're probably dead.
Yeah.
But when I walked up the stairs in North Court in Fullerton to try that case, I actually said to myself, if I fail this case, I need to get another job. Well, I didn't fail the case. He ended up getting found not guilty, but 4 days later, he was found dead on the street in Brea. Acute alcohol poisoning. It didn't dawn on me at the time that I hadn't done anything significantly for him other than beat the case. Then shortly thereafter, I had a 19-year-old kid, could have been known as Bill W., one of the co-founders of AA. Only Bill W. was passed out behind the wheel of his car, 2:30 on a Thursday afternoon. And of course, what it would have told me today if he walked in my office, anybody that young with that high of blood in the afternoon is dealing with a very serious issue. Well, all I was concerned about was keeping him out of jail and saving him, getting him off his case. And I brought a motion as to how the police had seen his car parked on the side of the street, him passed out. They went back, pulled open the door, he fell out in the street. And I brought a suppression motion of late Betty Elias grants it, and I thought, he'll be back again and I'll make some money off of him. Well, 7 months later, he calls me on the phone crying. I said, Bill, what is it? He said, Mr. Freeberg, I have another DUI, and all I could think about was, boy, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have another case and make a bunch of money. But he went on, he said, it's a lot worse, Mr. Freeberg. They say I hit a 12-year-old girl on a bicycle and killed her. Even telling you that story is emotional for me all these years later.
Jeez.
Because what it did to me mentally was I suddenly realized I'm not doing anything for anybody. And I went into the practice of law with a mission to help people, and I thought getting them off their case was the help they needed. But then I realized very quickly from those 2 cases, I wasn't doing anything that I had to help them get to the root cause. Getting a person off a case has some value. Getting them out of the system is what I should be aiming at.
Yes.
So I struggle with how do I do that? But I went to court about 2 weeks later. I announced to the judge, I'm starting this new practice called Sobriety Law. I'm going to help people get sober and get out of the system. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. You've got 2 clients here today. You got a guy who beat up somebody so badly he's crippled. You got another guy at 2nd DUI, injured somebody in an accident, he's crippled. What are you doing about those people? And I'll be very candid. I went home in sorrow. I agonized that night. And I realized that I didn't know anything about the issue of drugs and alcohol, and I need to find a way to find out. And here's what I decided to do. I decided to go to the county jail and interview some people who are living with that problem and interview them. And what I wanted to do was structure it in such a way they tell me their story. So here's how it goes. Joe, for me to do as good a job as I can to represent you, I need to know your whole life story from your earliest recollection, ups, downs, successes, failures, strengths, and weaknesses, how I learned that. You write for me what I call a journey letter, because everybody's story is complex. It must be at least 100 pages, single-spaced on both sides of the paper. Oh, and you have to use a number 2 pencil. I learned that because in the jail, you're not allowed to use typewriters or pens. You can only use a pencil. But what I found on the first 3 I did in the jail, the pencil becomes biofeedback, and sooner or later in that letter, the person's going to be saying, I was born in Oakland, I lived on a big house, I had a brother and a sister, and my mom and dad, and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, the pencil goes, and my dad left when I was 7. And abandonment, a sense of abandonment, is what is driving every single one of my cases. And remember, I got almost 300 journey letters now, and I have a mass of other people I've represented as well. But that journey letter then goes to someone like this gentleman here, and he's helped me on so many of my cases. It goes to a therapist, and they often will say to me, this is not hard to understand where we are. It's right there in the letter. For some reason, in writing the letter, they feel open enough to talk about it, whereas Neil has told me in the past, for this guy to walk into my office and just start talking about it's pretty slim. So the journey letter becomes the gate that a person like Neil opens. They work on therapy. They get it. They understand it. And he's actually helped me for several of my members go back to school and get a KDAC certificate, become a certified alcohol and drug counselor. I'm a big fan of AA. I'm not a member, but I love that program. And one of the great statements is you keep it by giving it away. And these people, once they've learned that lesson, they come to those meetings and they help so many people deal with this issue. So we're sort of working together to make this a big issue. And it's been popular with my clients, and Neil has been such a help to it. But we're actually contemplating moving that out even to a larger level. I would like to write a book about the 300 letters that I have and talk about each one of them, because I'll tell you right now, they're very emotional. I'll add an emotional point to it. Of my females with significant drug and alcohol problems, over 70% in the letter represent they've been sexually abused by a person in a position of trust. But the beautiful thing is, once they write it and they work with Neil, work with the therapist and understand it, it actually becomes their sense of strength. So I've gotten to the point of telling people, this is like you wake up one day, you're out of shape, you're out of weight, you're eating the wrong food, and you say to yourself, I'm going to get one of those Peloton bikes and try it. I've got one, and trust me, they're hard. But they get on it, and they work, and they struggle, and they sweat, and 6 months later, they're a different person, and they understand I can take care of any problem that's hitting me. So that's where I'm at, and of course, I owe so much, and my clients do, to Neil Sommer because of the work he does with them. He helps them figure it out.
Oh, that's incredible. And it goes into what we were talking about at our last podcast, the trauma and all that kind of issue, where the first step in actually dealing with the trauma is you have to identify what it is. You have to bring it to light to yourself. As we talked about, our brain is very adept at hiding things from ourselves. We are very good at not even ignoring. It's literally it's an absence of the memory, or things disappear from our past. We like to cover it up or hide it. And until you actually bring it out into the light, you can't even begin to deal with it. And so it sounds like that's exactly what this journey letter kind of helps accomplish here.
Yeah, for many of my clients, they will actually talk about the fact that this situation of being abandoned happens when they're so young, and they spend years struggling to hide it and understand it, and all of a sudden one day they wake up and there's heroin, fentanyl, alcohol, and they think it's a solution, but it really isn't. And many, when they write that letter, have figured it out. And that's the future of this business. We've got a ton of people, and I will tell you this, the legal system has come a long way. When I started practicing law, criminal defense 49 years ago, I can give you an example what sentencing was like. Your Honor, that's the defendant's mother in the front row, and if you send him to prison, she's going to be devastated. Look, she's crying. And she'd sob, and the judge would say, that's fine, ma'am, I'm sorry, that'll be 10 years.
Not a paid actor.
Exactly. But now we've actually moved so much further, because now we have something called the collaborative courts, drug court, DUI court, veterans court, homeless court, mental health court, where we're taking a positive step that's been stimulated by someone like Neil to take a look at the factors that are driving this behavior and have the confidence there can be an answer that gets them out of that situation. The beauty about it, once they get out, they're the future of helping other people not go down that road.
And I love that perspective too, that they're the ones helping. And it is very cool if you look at the history of, say, the collaborative courts and drug courts. Yeah. We are going away from a punitive model, which has been proven time and time again to not work within our justice system. Just punishment in of itself isn't going to help people get out of a situation. It might be necessary at times to put certain people away because there is no help, if you believe in that. But if you're really trying to help somebody, most people that enter our criminal justice system are there for a litany of circumstances that are just bad circumstances, whether it's poor childhood, drug use, getting in with the wrong crowd. I mean, any number of things, but it's not that it's a bad person that's entering these situations. It's somebody that has been more or less corrupted by the environment that they're surrounded in. And these are the people that need help and can be helped. And if they're just punished, it helps to reinforce that negative behavior and that negative model. And which is why I think it's brilliant that we've come up with the collaborative courts. And the more research and the more I've seen about what we're doing, of course, it's not perfected yet and there's a lot of growth, but it is such a huge step forward in actually getting people help as opposed to, just taking people off the street or, punishing people for doing something wrong. So I think that's phenomenal. I mean, even going back to the journey letter, that sounds like a therapeutic tool. It could be a phenomenal tool for any therapist. I don't see a situation that couldn't help. If you're going to see a therapist for whatever reason, I feel like anybody, not just somebody within the drug and alcohol, with a drug and alcohol problem or substance abuse problem, anybody could probably benefit by writing something like a journey letter and helping them to identify pieces of their life that they've likely overlooked. Because I'm willing to bet, not that I actually haven't read any of these journey letters, but I'm willing to bet that in the journey letter, there is a point where somebody starts elaborating on and remembering things that they had essentially forgotten. And that's probably when the biometric feedback starts kicking up and the honesty and the emotions start pouring out, because we move day to day. We exist with what's in front of us, and we don't often look back at our lives. And when we do, we look back at certain moments, but you overlook the parts that you don't want to look at because you don't have the time or the emotional stability or the strength or whatever it is.
Let me weigh in on it. The overriding theme in every one of these letters is shame. Shame. Ashamed of my upbringing, ashamed of my family, ashamed of myself. Because typically Lloyd and I advocate for people that are fundamentally okay people, good people.
Yeah.
When you measure people by just their behavior, you're making a big mistake. You're much better off to motivate someone by their intent or by their motivations. But the overriding theme is that the individuals that Lloyd and I work with and have worked with are normal people that typically have grown up in very abnormal circumstances, very bizarre, not knowing. Because remember, when you're 2 years old, 3, 5, 7, 9, your world is the house you live in and the people that are there. And if they're raping you or they're calling you an idiot every 10 seconds or they're drinking and beating each other up, that is normal for you. It's a normal world for you. And the sense of disconnection is abandonment. Attachment theory will tell you when you do not attach to another human being in a healthy way, you will try to compensate for that in other ways. That's where peer group identification, gang membership. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and say, my son just hangs out with the wrong people. And I'll say, the mother of one of those wrong people came in last week and told me about your son. That her kid was hanging out with your son. What are you trying to say? I said, trying to say anything other than your son is part of a group in which he feels an attachment. But the rules of the group, the culture in that group, who you need to be and how you need to act in order to belong and to be welcome in that group, those rules societally are abnormal. They're criminal. Yeah. They're aberrant. They're bad. However, you know those rules because you grew up with them. You grew up in those rules, but now you're getting arrested for possession or for assaults or for things that are normal behavior in the world that you've grown up into. Yeah. But then you've been made to feel ashamed of by the quote unquote good people out there in the world. And then the laws step in and they tell you you're bad. And then Lloyd says, I'd like you to write about the bad person you are. Well, that's how they hear it. No, that's how they hear it. And so that's where the resistance is. Oh, no, I'm not that person. Yes, you are. But it's okay. You didn't know any different.
Yeah.
I need to know what rules you grew up with, what cultural, what mores, what was good and what was bad. In your home, it was good to be tough.
You had
and to beat somebody up every now and then. You're not a man unless you're kicking somebody's butt in the home or on the playground. And so the sense of abandonment is really, physical abandonment is really critical, but there's also that emotional abandonment where you do not have a healthy attachment to a mature adult for one reason. The mature adults in your house, or let's say the ones that have been around the planet more often, came from the same home you're growing up in.
Yes, yeah.
And until somebody intervenes and has you take a snapshot of that life in the form of the 100 pages, you have no frame of reference. There isn't any amount of abuse or drug and alcohol treatments on the planet that can compete with that inbuilt schema that you developed when you were a little kid, until you look at it and say, you know what? The world I grew up in, all of that behavior of mine was normal.
You
It
have
was
to accept
normal.
it. You have to accept yourself
In order
to
to
an extent.
survive, in order to survive in that world, these are the behaviors and the attitudes and the beliefs I had to take on. The problem is there was nobody there to tell me to turn them off at around age 14, 15, and 16. And then I entered into the juvenile justice system where I learned more aberrant, more dysfunctional, more criminogenic rules and regulations. And that's where that part of the population goes into the prison system, many for life. There are those that Lloyd and I and others have really helped to see that you're not a bad person because you've done things that are bad.
Yeah.
I don't even like the word bad. You're not a bad, you
Better.
survived. And if you're really bad, then yes, we'd like you out of circulation.
Yeah.
And there is that percentage of people, but the statistics would tell you it's 8 to 12% of the people in the prison population are bad. I'm talking about psychopathic.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who take great pleasure in inflicting pain on other people. There are those people.